Welcome back to the 10 Adventures podcast. Summer is here, and I know a lot of people are thinking about their adventures this summer. Whether you are planning a summer of day hiking, cycling, backpacking, or great canoe trips, how to stay hydrated and fueled is of huge consequence to the success of your trip. Summer is here, and I know a lot of people are thinking about their adventures. Whether you're planning a summer of day hiking, cycling, backpacking, or great canoe trips, how to stay hydrated and fueled is of huge consequence to the success of your trip. For many of us, fueling means buying energy gels, dehydrated meals, protein powders, and more. But are all these ultra-processed foods the optimal way to fuel ourselves? Today, I'm excited to have Juliana Gedney, a nutritional therapist, on the podcast to talk about all things nutrition and travel. Hi, Juliana. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for the introduction.
I'm super excited about today's discussion because it feels like we're starting to see nutrition become this massive topic. Not so much in North America, but I know in Europe, the quality of the food we eat is being linked to a lot of health outcomes. Whether or not there was just a study that the kind of modern diet is linked with colon cancer with people under 50 and not having enough fiber and having all these energy drinks. And so I just am super interested in nutrition in the outdoors and all this, terrible food we're eating. Before we talk about that, what's your background in nutrition?
So my background in nutrition, I come from a place where if I'm perfectly honest, I had no interest in nutrition or health or fitness growing up. For me, nutrition was very much about, it was a vanity thing, to be honest. I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, where it was all very much about, skinny models in the magazines. And so I didn't have the healthiest relationship with food at all. Fortunately for me, my mum was a big believer in cooking from scratch. So I wasn't particularly exposed to ultra processed foods. And I also learned to cook from a very young age. But I'd say that my biggest shift came when I had children and I found out my oldest son had autism. So obviously I did what any mother would do. I went down this rabbit hole of whatever I could do to support him. And nutrition was such a big part of that. And I just felt that if I could get him into the right place with what he was eating, then everything would feel a bit easier for him from then on. So needless to say, that kind of transferred through into my own diet, my family's diet. And the difference that I noticed in my own health was massive. I went from being exhausted all the time. I was always getting ill. I had food intolerances, like the list of which was growing. I had allergies. And that really, really disappeared as I improved my own nutrition. I mean, it's a gradual process, and if I'm honest, it's still a process. I think it probably always will be, but the difference was amazing. So from there, I decided to go from a hobby into a career. I got my diploma in nutritional therapy at the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, and now I love seeing clients. I love seeing the difference it makes to them. I see clients with a whole range of different issues. I've got a personal interest in chronic stress and preventing burnout, but it's often life-changing for them. So it's amazing.
It's funny you mentioned that fatigue and just kind of feeling worn out. I read an article in a UK newspaper a couple months ago about eating 30 different vegetables a week. And just, that's a better way to get all your nutrition. And so my wife and I, and the kids have been trying to eat way more vegetables and way more variety. And some nights, I have a busy job. I have 3 kids, life is busy, just like every other parent. And most nights, 8 o'clock comes, I'm just shattered. But since I've switched to this, this variety of vegetable eating, some nights I'm like, I feel like I'm buzzing. And I don't know if it's nutrition or not, but I've gone from just being absolutely shattered, and I'm still shattered some nights, but some nights I feel like as good as I felt in years. And I'm like, is this just having all these different vegetables? It seems wild that could be the case, but there's something about eating healthy vegetables and fruits that I wasn't aware of. And I guess that leads into this, your website. You talk about using nutrition and lifestyle to achieve peak physical and mental performance. Is kind of what I've experienced what you help other people experience in terms of just kind of changing their life?
Yeah, I just think that if you haven't got that right, then you're wading through treacle all the time. So it doesn't matter, how much personal development you do, how much training you do, how much studying you do. If your physiology is off because you're not feeding your body properly, I mean, you are what you eat. This isn't a new radical statement, but if you're not getting those basics right, then you're trying to do all the rest of it while you're carrying a sack of potatoes over your shoulder, is how I see it. So I think you do need to really focus on your nutrition, get your lifestyle as right as you can. I mean, it's not perfect. We all have off days. I think the 80-20 rule is more realistic for everybody. But over time, you'll see a difference, and then you'll notice that the way you are performing, you are getting closer to your peak. And I find it interesting. I find that I tend to look back over the last year and the changes that I've made and how differently I feel. And it's a gradual climb. There'll be ups and downs, but I really do think that it's a huge part of getting to where you want to be in terms of your performance.
So what are some of the basics of nutrition most people get wrong?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I do notice time and time again. Not eating balanced meals is a big one, and that's something that I really used to fall foul of before. I mean, I used to love a plate of pasta with butter, and that was it. And, now I look back on that and I think, where was the protein? Where are the vegetables? It was a nightmare. No wonder I was exhausted all the time. But, that's quite an extreme version of it. But so many people will have a breakfast that is completely devoid of any protein at all. So straight away, they're starting their day off with a great big sugar spike, which then is going to affect their moods, their energy levels, their ability to concentrate all for the rest of the day. So I just think having that focus on every meal time, like what protein have I got? What complex carbohydrates have I got? What healthy fats have I got in here? And that is such a good start to the day. And then you just keep on going on that way. Another thing I've noticed is even in people that are obviously really trying to do the right thing with their nutrition, people can forget that natural sugar is still sugar. So I'll sometimes have clients who maybe they start their day with a teaspoon of Manuka honey in something, because Manuka honey is really good for you. It's got loads of great nutrients in it, but it is still sugar. And again, it just starts your blood sugar levels off a bit. You go on a roller coaster for the rest of the day, and it's really hard to straighten that out. Even something like having a lot of fruit during the day can become a problem, especially as you get older. Your body gets a little bit more insulin resistant as you get older, so you have to start trying to just be a bit more mindful of those things. Other things that I've noticed, it's not such an issue now, fortunately, but still the low fat products, that people trying to get out of that mindset that fat is bad for you, and actually it's such an important macronutrient. We need it for brain function, for the health of our skin, our cells, our eyes, hormones. It's such a vital thing that we have to have every day. We've got fat soluble vitamins that we can't absorb and transport if we don't have enough fat in our diet. So it's really trying to change that mindset that fat is bad for you. And then finally, I think a big one, people underestimate the effect of sleep on their nutrition as well. I think people get used to performing on, just not quite enough sleep. They think they're fine. But then, there's so much evidence out there to show how your calorie intake goes up the next day when you're tired. And when you're tired and you're carb seeking throughout the day, your body isn't responding to your sugar intake in the same way as it would be if you were well rested. So I think it's a really important sort of pillar of health to get right that then will affect how you want to eat for the following day as well.
Those are some great tips. I feel like if I were to do all of those, my life would be fantastic. Looking at listeners of this podcast, a lot of them are, people that are training for a big trip. They're not, athletes or professional athletes or, hardcore adventurers, but they want to do, great trips. It could be a hard day hike, or they may want to try and do 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers on a bike trip or go on a multi-day trip. And how is nutrition different for someone who's going to be doing these long kind of endurance events, multi-hour, multi-day?
So again, balance is really important, and carbohydrate intake is really important for that as well. You want to be focused on complex carbohydrates that are going to keep you fueled throughout the day. But then if you're also doing endurance events, then simple carbohydrates will play a role as well. So they're the easily digestible sugars that may be lower in fiber, something that can fuel you quickly while you're on a bike ride. And then you'll be thinking about, introducing more complex carbs for that evening meal, to load you up the next day. So by complex carbs, I'm talking about things like whole grains and vegetables. Legumes are really good sources for that. Healthy fats are really important as well. So you want to be looking at oily fish, avocados, nuts and seeds, coconut and olive oil. And absolutely you want to keep on with your protein, because that's so important for recovery. If you think of all the pressure that you put under your muscles, there's going to be muscle repair that has to happen overnight so that you're ready to keep on with your trip the next day. So a really good amount of protein, certainly, when you're taking fuel stops. And some people find when they're doing endurance work that even a little bit of protein combined with simple carbohydrates during that effort is helpful as well. I think another thing that people sometimes forget, we get really focused on the macronutrients, but the micronutrients are super important when you're doing endurance things and training as well. You want to really be thinking about a diversity of plant foods. When you're training and you're increasing your metabolic rate during exercise, you've got an increased demand for antioxidants. So by making sure that you've got as many diverse plant foods as possible, then especially things like the berries and green leafy vegetables, even some dark chocolate's really good for that. It's just going to really help with that antioxidant status that you're going to need throughout your training and actually on the day.
So when people are doing, they're doing their event, they're in a foreign country, they're away from home. How can people eat better when they're not cooking their own food? And I was just on a family holiday in South Dakota, and it was really like every restaurant had chicken strips, burgers, fries, and steak. And their salads were those those salads, they look like salad, but there's almost who knows how, I've never seen lettuce like that. And so I just ate a ton of salads because everything else was kind of, obviously unhealthy. But I was thinking there must be a better way to eat healthy while traveling. How do you counsel your clients?
Yeah, it is hard when you're away. I've just come back from a camping trip with my family myself, and so you're at the whims of whatever you can get in the local restaurants. I think fortunately for us in Europe, we've got quite good standards in most restaurants. I mean, not always, but I was listening to a podcast that you had earlier about summer trips people are booking and how popular the European trips are. And I was thinking to myself that I think Italy was like the number one destination at the moment. And I thought, actually, this question in Italy is going to be so straightforward. it's
all of Europe
really
almost.
Problem. Yeah. You're spoiled for choice for great food over there. But I just think it's a general guideline. Just look for whole foods where you can. It sounds like on your trip that kind of sounds like it might have been a bit impossible. But if you can go for whole foods, like actual ingredients, not the processed foods, and choose dishes where the protein is the focus. So as opposed to something like a dish of pasta where, you've got a whole plate of carbohydrates, only a little bit of protein within the sauce, I'd go for something that's maybe like a steak and a salad, or a fish and some vegetables and potatoes. So the protein part of it is the star of that plate. And I find that, there's just never really enough vegetables on that plate. So order the extra sides of vegetables or the extra salad. Yeah, I mean, your salad sounds like a disaster. That's really tough. But I know certainly from a European perspective, it's it's a lot easier for us. So I feel quite grateful for that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's, when you go to Europe, you go there to eat all this incredible food, and it's always really fresh. Like, for most of Europe, they won't tolerate these, bag salads that have a shelf life of 3 or 4 weeks. Like salads, you
Yeah.
just put a bit of oil on and they taste wonderful. Whereas here in North America, you can get those, but they're, 4 or 5 times the price. So a lot of restaurants, no one, people don't go to the restaurant for a salad, so they just give you these little bag salads, and yeah, it's suboptimal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're, if you're doing sort of a camping trip, if you've got the facilities to cook yourself a little bit, I don't know how practical that would be. But again, I guess the similar format. So again, whole foods when you're cooking your own meals and you're away. But then if you're having to take things that are more portable, then I'm completely obsessed with nuts and seeds. I seem to always go on about them, but they are so good. And things like, I'm trying to think what proteins you can take that are more portable. You can get things like jerky and things like that. You want to be careful with the salt contents for a lot of those foods. It is really dependent on the way you can store your food when you're out and about, I think. Pulses would be really good, actually. Bean salads and things like that, they tend to last quite well out and about.
So when people are preparing for, a big summer event, they're still at home. One of the challenges I hear a lot is people just don't have the time to make healthy meals. So they end up making pasta with canned tomato sauce, or they just put something in the microwave. How do you help people, eat healthy when they do have a busy lifestyle, even at home, to find the time to make, healthy, balanced meals? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, this is, I mean, I very rarely meet people that this isn't an issue for, myself included. I'm a massive fan of meal planning. I think if you can get organised about it, there's been times where I've known I'm going to be so flat out busy, I have to invest a little bit of time now to know what I'm going to be eating over the next few weeks. And I've even got to the point where I've put all those shopping lists ready on my internet shopping basket, so I can get this all done in minutes. It's all ready and I know what I'm going to be doing. There's no sort of decision fatigue that's having to take, to play out there at all. It's all taken care of. And then when you've got those meal plans, I think the more you can prep ahead, the better. So, on your days off, it's not always what we want to be doing on our days off, but it really does, it pays dividends later in the week. Just, prep as much as you can, batch cook things, freeze things for later on in the week, or freeze things even for later in the month. When it comes to dinner time, I always make sure that I've got an extra portion cooked, so that's my lunch covered for the next day, because I haven't got time to start preparing a lunchtime meal. And I find even if you work away, most places they have a microwave or somewhere that you can heat up your food. If you're going to be working away all day, then I suggest to clients that they get all their food prepped and ready for the following day, so that it's all ready to go to take out, because quite often people will say they just run out of time in the morning, and then you just end up picking stuff out of the fridge. So it's just really forward thinking and planning is the answer to time saving when you need it.
And when you work with clients, do you help them discover recipes or meals that are healthy, easy to prepare, and also delicious? Is that part? Because I feel like it's taken 25 years to find 5 or 6 meals like that for me and my wife personally. And I feel like that's one of the barriers, is like, what is going to be healthy and easy and delicious? That's not easy to find.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I offer is meal plans for people. So I have clients who've asked for either 2-week or 4-week meal plans, and then they get the shopping list. I give them an itinerary of what they need to prep when, so that they don't have to be you want to try and avoid having to cook as you go, because that's all of a sudden you feel like you're cooking all the time. And they get the recipes with it. So yeah, that's something that I do offer for people. Sometimes people people that are a bit more creative in the kitchen themselves, I just offer sort of guidelines. So, we'll gradually over time change what they want to be eating. So maybe 1 month we'll be looking at changing the proteins, and then we'll just be adding things on, and then they'll want to make their own minds up about how they do that. So you kind of get used to dealing with two different types of clients.
I love the shopping list, because there's so many times you're halfway through a new recipe and you're like, oh no, we need smoked paprika. And okay, somebody's got to run. You got to look. It's like one of these, spices that's not at the regular stores. And you finally find it. And it's like such a pain. But if you have here's a list, buy all these things for the next 2 weeks, that makes it so nice.
And even when you've got a stack of recipes, putting that list together it can be quite time consuming and a bit of a faff. So it's good you've got it all there for the week and you're good to go.
Even just making the decision, what are we going to eat tonight? Sometimes that's my wife and I, we texting back, I don't know, I'm busy, I can't think. And it's like, just if it's Tuesday, we're having zoodles with homemade pasta sauce. Okay, that's really easy because it says it on a piece of paper. It kind of just makes, when you're busy, it makes a busy life just that much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's at the end of the day when you're trying to make those decisions and you're looking in the fridge and your brain can't quite compute how it's going to put all those things together. I think, again, just having that there, having that taken care of, and you just got some instructions to follow makes such a huge difference.
Definitely. I want to switch gears and talk a bit about ultra processed foods, which it actually reminds me a little bit of, hearing of smoking as a child. When I was a kid, I remember when it just started to be, society was like, oh yeah, smoking is really bad. And it seems to me the articles I'm reading now are portraying the impact of ultra processed foods on things like cancer or diabetes or general health, things like longevity. It seems like they're really bad, but I'm not in the nutrition business. Maybe I'm just reading kind of random articles. As someone who thinks about this and works in this every day, what's kind of your take on ultra processed foods?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's a good idea to establish exactly what they are, because you often get some people saying, well, once you've cooked anything, it's processed, which is true. But in terms of actually ultra processed foods, I think the things we're really talking about are the industrially produced foods that are full of ingredients that are hard to say and that you would never ever find in your kitchen. They tend to come in gorgeous packets and brightly coloured and are really appealing to children. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And I mean, there's so much, like you said, there's so much coming out now about the harms that are associated with it. There's a recent clinical trial showing how people that are eating ultra processed foods can be consuming up to 500 calories extra a day. They're really designed for you to eat mindlessly and to really want more of. They are highly palatable. They've got really, really strong flavors, and you get that moreish thing from them. So think about the crisps, and all of a sudden you realise that you've eaten this whole massive bag of them. That's in that context, you can see how it's so easy to overeat if you're eating a diet that is high in ultra processed foods. And there's so many harms now that are being associated with this. There's a recent B&J review that has come out saying about how it's associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, some cancers. We've got sleep, anxiety, depression, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and there's more. So I think that there's very good reason to be very cautious around this. I find it quite interesting that there's two sides of the discussion around ultra processed food. So you have one camp, which I'm in. I'm quite happy to hold my hand up to that considers them to be a public harm like smoking. And I think that they should be treated as such. But then you also got another camp who believes that no food should be demonized, and that you need to consider people who maybe have eating disorders. So some food is better than no food, which is quite right. And also, there's a lot of people that financially eating a whole food diet is hard. So it's an interesting conversation around ultra processed foods, because I can also sympathise with the other side of it.
And so one thing, taking this discussion, to the outdoors, we have, gels and these, what appear to be really healthy bars that have 75 ingredients. And we take powders, and we have these dehydrated meals that have, 50 different ingredients. And one thing I've been wondering is, we think we're being healthy. The packaging, all the words are denoting health. But if you look at the ingredients, most of the things I can't pronounce. I don't know what they are. Is this a case of, we're kind of fueling ourselves with what is probably not the optimal nutrition, because it's all kind of, highly processed food done in a big factory, and they're just marketing to us that this is healthy, but actually maybe it's kind of similar to eating a bag of Doritos or, something like that. It's just they've kind of changed the marketing for us.
Yeah, there's some really sneaky ultra processed food health weirdness going on out there. I've seen, I think I've noticed that protein seems to be stamped on all the cereals now, all the bars, and then all of a sudden it's suddenly going to be healthier. I think when you're looking at what you have to do to perform well during endurance events, or just generally out and about, do trekking, cycling, those sorts of holidays, you need to kind of balance what is practical, what's going to be effective, and just be really mindful of the ingredients lists. So there are some products out there that are cleaner than others. I would always go for whole foods where possible. So if it's realistic in the trip that you're taking, again, nuts and seeds, dried fruits is brilliant. So trying to find whole food solutions that you can travel with. You can even make your own trail bars, protein balls. The internet is full of recipes. Again, I'd be mindful of the sugars that they're using. So there's ways around it, but then sometimes it is going to be, convenient, and you do need to have something that's easy to hand. So I saw on your website, you've got a nutrition blog post that you've written. You mentioned those kind bars, and I think they're great. Actually, my kids really like them as a fallback. Just that they're like a nut, and they're kind of like a nut bar. And it's just, sometimes you do just need something that's easy to grab. But then if you're looking for things like protein powders, you can find really clean products out there now. So you want to avoid the sweeteners, avoid added sugars, avoid all the extra additives. Things like electrolytes, they're a big thing at the moment. They seem to have suddenly exploded onto the market. And again, just trying to find things that haven't got the sweeteners in there, haven't got the added sugars. So you just need to be a bit smart about what you're buying.
It's funny, you mentioned the no fat. And I remember as a kid, my parents only had no fat. And even now, everything is no fat. And the new no fat is either protein or keto or no sugar or electrolytes. And you look at some, it's like, oh, no sugar. And it's got, a bunch of sweeteners and 50 chemicals. And you're like, no sugar is kind of irrelevant. Like, no sugar and healthy ingredients is good, but no sugar and a bunch of chemicals is not good.
Yeah, sometimes I think I'd rather take my chances with the sugar on that because at least I know what that's doing to us.
Yeah, exactly. So, this kind of leads into this idea of supplements. And again, there's this huge industry of supplements where I have friends that get into fitness and all of a sudden they try and sell me supplements. I'm like, I don't understand why you're now a supplement salesperson. You've got a full-time job, but that's kind of what they do. And what are your thoughts on supplements, which can be, hundreds of dollars a month, versus just kind of basic nutrition, like eating healthy?
Yeah, so as a nutritional therapist, so I think anybody in the nutrition field, food is always going to come first. There is some magic in the food matrix, which is what we call the physical and chemical food components of your food, and how the molecular relationships in that food and how that then reacts with your body. And you just can't replace that with a tablet or with a isolated nutrients. And the studies have been done on that. And, there's been some studies that have even found that an isolated nutrient is called harm, whereas, eating it in abundance in natural food is really good for you. So whole foods are always going to be the preferred source of any nutrients. But then having said that, as a nutritional therapist, we do use therapeutic supplements when we think it's going to be helpful to our clients. So maybe they've got deficiencies, or there's something out there that's going to support their health goals. And, while they're making the changes they need to make to their diet, then really good quality supplements absolutely have their place. But I think you do need to be mindful of what you're buying, where you're buying it from. There's a lot of supplements out there that, you don't even know the bioavailability of them. So you don't even know that if you've taken that, if it's actually going to be absorbed by your body properly to do what it claims that it does. So if you go for really good brands that are really strict about how clean their product is, about how bioavailable their product is, then, you're going to get some better results from that. But I think the thing really would be to get some professional advice before you start taking supplements, because especially if you're already on medications, then there's some supplements that can really sort of interact badly with those, and you need to know what you're doing sometimes with those.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. Sometimes you see people that are taking 20 or 30 pills a day, and they just, heard from somebody take this pill, heard from somebody take that pill, not knowing, what's the impact of these on, when they're done in conjunction, it could be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen a lot. I mean, I take supplements myself. And I'd say there's a few sort of supplements that tend to be good for most people. So, a good quality multi-nutrients is going to be helpful. Especially if you've got times where you're not able to be as hot on your diet as you would be normally, or if you're really busy and you're under chronic stress, your nutrient demands can increase then as well. So a multi-nutrient can be a really useful thing to take. Something like a fish oil is really useful. They're really great anyway in terms of being anti-inflammatory, but they're antioxidant. So when you're training hard, that's also a really useful addition as well. So yeah, there is a place for them. But I think, you just need to be mindful.
And so my last question is, I love hacks where people, they figured out things, and, they can help with like, oh, here's a simple way to solve this problem. And so I'm wondering if you have any nutrition hacks that people can take. And I'm thinking to start with, like, how to replace the cravings. We all have, my wife's a chocolate, that's what her go-to is. I'm like a savory or salty type of guy. How do you help people, or what's some hacks to break that addiction to the bad food we all love eating?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that relates back to what I was talking about before. So starting the day really strong with a really great protein source. And it's amazing how a good breakfast can really play out for the rest of the day. So I'm a huge fan of eggs, whichever way makes you happy. An omelette is fabulous because then you can stick a load of plant food in there as well, get some herbs and some green things in there, and they're quick. So, I think a lot of people dive for cereals or, some carby, sugary thing because it's easy to access, but eggs are super quick to make in the morning. They take no time at all. I think be prepared because, come 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the danger zone, your willpower is going to crash. You're really getting into decision fatigue territory. So I think if you can be prepared for all of a sudden wanting to do the wrong thing because you're hungry, and you make it easier to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. So by that I mean, have a snack prepped, ready to go. So you just have to grab it. There is no thought to go into it. You don't have to pop into the shop to get yourself some biscuits or whatever. And then the next thing would be, the big one is manage your environment, because if it's not there, you can't eat it. I know if I've got sugary things in the house, I will sniff it out, and I know what it does. I'm a nutritional therapist. I do this for a living. But if it's there and my mind knows it's there, it's just so much harder to make the right choices with your food. And I think another one is just get really creative with the food that you're eating in terms of increasing your plant diversity. So Earlier on, you mentioned the 30 plus plant foods a week, which I love. I often get clients look at me like I've gone a bit, I'm being ridiculous when I suggest they start eating that. But it's so easy to do when you start using things like packets of mixed seeds or tins of mixed beans. You can get really creative with a salad, and you've got all the leaves like watercress and spinach and rocket and herbs. Like, all of a sudden, you've got so many different plant foods in a day, and it includes things like your herbs, your spices. So just get really creative with how you can add little bits. I mean, I'm always telling my clients to scatter mixed seeds on things, so I love them.
This has been wonderful, Juliana. You've shared so much knowledge. I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can follow me on my Instagram account. So that's Juliana_Gedney_nutrition. I've got a Facebook account, Juliana Gedney Nutrition, but my main thing obviously is my website. So that's www.jgnutri, which is jgnutri.com. So yeah, I'd love to. I'm always happy to answer questions. If people want to get in touch, I'd be really happy to hear from anybody.
That's excellent. I'll put links to those, the website and your social accounts in the show notes. And thank you for sharing your advice today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on. It's been fun.
And thanks to all you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like or a comment. And with that, we'll be back next week to explore the world and hear about more epic adventures on the 10 Adventures podcast. Start planning your own adventure by visiting us at 10adventures.com and listen to other episodes of the 10 Adventures podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you find your podcasts.